All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining today for our November edition of the Small Business Webinar Series. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. First of all, the website, which you logged in from today, or if you're watching the recording, that's also where we post any handouts and copies of recordings from past sessions as well. So feel free to use those as a resource if you missed something or if you want to share the webinar with somebody that wasn't able to attend live. We do archive those back for quite a while if you want to look back at any of the topics there as well. Contact information is also there for myself. So if you have any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear, please feel free to shoot me an email and we'll get those into the discussion. And we can see if we can get something scheduled around those in the future. So one more housekeeping note before we start today. Our December 7th session will be Rich Gannon, and it's going to be a follow-up to the Chat GPT that was a popular session earlier this year. So going to kind of expand on that topic, and that's going to be on December 7th at 11 o'clock. So mark your calendars for that one if it sounds interesting to you. As far as questions today, you're always welcome to send in questions through the chat window, and we will definitely take time at the end of today's session for you to ask questions verbally if you'd like to do that. But if you do send them in via chat, we'll try to get them in wherever we've got a break in the speaker's presentation. So with that, I want to introduce today's speaker. We have Sam Gilbertson joining us today, who is a consultant with Renewably. So Sam is an experienced sustainability consultant, provides guidance for corporations, small businesses, and nonprofits, leveraging the knowledge he's gained from his Master's of Science and an MBA degree from the University of Montana. Sam's established the company Renewably to address a growing need for sustainable business opportunities across Montana. Alongside his work at Renewably, Sam also serves as an adjunct faculty member at the University of Montana and contributes to local community efforts as a board member of Soil Cycle, a bicycle-powered composting nonprofit. And I don't know if ever in my life I thought I would hear bicycles and composting in the same sentence. So you're already a little bit unique, Sam. So with that, I will turn it over to you, and thanks for joining us today.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you to the SBDC for allowing me to speak a little bit on this topic, and thank you to everyone who showed up this morning on this rainy, wintry day. This is a big topic, so really my goal today is just to try to introduce sustainability in business, discuss some opportunities and advantages. What is sustainability? How can you integrate it into your business? And then hope that it's really just a jumping off point. I'd love to provide some general guidance today, but hopefully be able to connect with some of you, either whether you're here live or watching the recording at a later date, and be able to learn a little bit about your organization. So I'll share my screen, and that's showing up for everyone.
Looks good on my end.
Great. Just gonna get this open. Awesome. All right, so as I mentioned, the agenda today, just to sort of discuss what sustainability means. I'm sure it's a word that a lot of you are hearing now, whether you're a business leader or somebody who is in any kind of organization. It's probably a topic that has been brought up. So what does that mean? How do we prevent that from just becoming sort of another buzzword? And then talk about some opportunities and advantages, and then some initiatives, get into some specific initiatives, and then open it up for questions. So hopefully I'll kind of move at an efficient clip so we have time for questions. But if you want to put any questions in the chat throughout, and then Joel, if there's kind of an opportunity to stop me, and I'd love for it to be as much of a discussion as possible. So yeah, feel free. I mean, you can also unmute yourself and just ask a question if that feels more comfortable for you. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on climate science. It is part of my background, but I assume if you're here today, you're probably aware of changing global temperatures. I just wanted to present that visually, sort of to provide some background as to why we might be thinking about sustainability and why we might take this upon ourselves. So this is just a rise in global average temperatures from 1850 to 2022, bringing it locally. We've seen in Montana, we've seen smoky summers, we've seen more frequent natural disasters, and this impacts us as a state that really prioritizes tourism, conservation. So this is locally very important. But again, I don't want to spend too much time on the background today. If you have sort of any doubts that this is ongoing, I think you can just sort of look out your window in the summer. So what does the term sustainability mean to you? I'd love if anybody wants to unmute themselves and, if this is something you've come across or an area you've explored in your business, if anyone feels comfortable kind of providing a definition of what this means, that would be great to kick us off.
I had a comment come in that about taking care of the environment while doing your job.
Great. Yeah, that's excellent. Does anybody else have kind of a definition they want to share? I think that's a great starting off point. So recognizing the environmental constraints while also realizing that if we run and operate a business, obviously we're not going to shrink our operations to zero. So it's this recognition that our resources are finite, but we still need to operate our business. And hopefully you can't hear the garbage truck racing by, but we can talk about waste a little later on. So that's aptly timed. So here's just one definition. Sustainability in business refers to a company's strategy to reduce the negative environmental impact resulting from their operations. And this presents unique implications and opportunities for small businesses. Another way of looking at this visually, some of you may have heard of the 3 Ps or the triple bottom line. So when we talk about sustainability, again, we want to think about profit because we're operating businesses. We need to stay alive. We need to stay afloat, which means prioritizing profit, but not doing so at the cost of people, at the cost of the people that we employ, being cognizant of our labor force, and also being cognizant of the environmental constraints in our shared resources. So when we think about the 3 Ps, we think about this is really the way that we would like to operate a business, ideally. So where are we today in sustainability, and why might this be relevant for smaller businesses? So if any of you have followed the news around climate or sustainability, there's a lot of pressure right now on large businesses to disclose their emissions, to disclose the emissions that result as a direct result of their operations. So in fact, within the last couple of weeks, California signed into law a mandatory climate disclosure for businesses of a certain size, large businesses operating in California. So you might think, okay, well, I'm a smaller business or medium-sized business. Why does this affect me? So these businesses, if you want to do business, if you want to be a supplier to one of these businesses, now you're going to be part of their supply chain. So when they're evaluating their climate impacts, they're measuring their climate, they're now going to be looking to the smaller organizations that are supplying their materials, vendors, to provide them with information on those climate metrics. So if you haven't already heard this from your customers, your employees, it's coming. So some of the businesses that I've met with here in Missoula have told me that they've had some of their largest customers start to ask them about what they're doing about their climate impacts, and in some cases even asking them to provide measurements. So you might think of reducing your operations as a burden, as something that's going to cost you money, but I want to present some of the opportunities that sustainability can provide for your business. So the first is cost savings. So when you evaluate your energy as a business, your water use, your waste, you can actually highlight a lot of opportunities for saving money as part of your physical footprint. The second is customer attraction through enhanced brand reputation. So demonstrating a commitment to sustainability can enhance your brand's reputation and attract environmentally conscious consumers, which younger consumers are increasingly paying attention to which brands are positioning themselves in the market this way. The third is employee engagement and retention. So something that I hear from small business owners a lot is that it can be difficult to find employees right now and to find employees who are willing to stick around and be consistent and show up. And one way to engage talent and to keep employees engaged is to undergo sustainability initiatives and position yourself as a sustainability leader. Increasingly, younger employees are looking for employers that are thinking about this issue, that are taking action on this issue. So it's a way to bring in talent, but it's also a way to keep your employees engaged by giving them something meaningful, giving them something purposeful. And for a lot of employees right now, that is sustainability. Another thing that I will touch on a little bit today, but is worth chatting about with your accountant if you have one, is access to funding and tax incentives. So the first, access to funding, a lot of investor groups now are asking small businesses, startups, any business that's seeking funding, they're asking them what they're doing about climate. What are you doing about sustainability? What are you doing to reduce the environmental impact of your operations? So that's the first. The second is that right now with the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as Department of Energy grants, there is a lot of money right now for energy efficiency optimization. So if you own a building, there's a lot of tax incentives right now for solar. The payback period to implement solar is significantly shorter than it used to be. And also we're seeing significant rate hikes on electricity, so that solar is becoming just a better and better investment. And there are also other funding opportunities through the Department of Energy, a lot of grants that are going towards energy efficiency. It's good to, these aren't going to apply to every business. Some of them are specifically only applying to businesses that own and operate a building, but there are tax incentives for a lot of different kinds of businesses. The last will really depend on your kind of business, but that's risk management. So if you have any kind of supply chain, doing your best to localize that supply chain will really insulate you from potential risks from climate, and also just evaluating what are your risks from a changing climate. So those are some opportunities. Realize this is kind of like drinking from a fire hose. I just want to touch on some specific initiatives which hopefully will apply to some of you depending on what your business is, and I'd love to hear from you at the end if you have some specific questions about what you can do for your business. But if you're trying to get started, the best way is to start with measurement. So something I like to say a lot is you can only manage what you measure. So if we think about, using the example of maybe a budget, if you never measured what you were spending and then you just felt like, I should spend less on groceries, but you never actually measured, what am I spending each month? What am I spending each year? And how can I reduce that? So let's say you start cooking more at home. That's great. You're probably spending less going out. But if you don't actually take time to measure those impacts, it's going to be a lot harder to see what are the impacts from the initiatives that I'm undertaking. So starting with measurement. For larger businesses, this usually means a carbon inventory, which is basically an evaluation of everything your business does and the associated emissions from that activity. This can sound like a big undertaking if you're a smaller business. The best place you can start is just measuring smaller things like waste or employee travel, commuting. Just take sort of one topic, energy use, and start measuring it and undertake some initiatives and see what kind of impacts you're seeing. So the best kind of strategies that you can implement are things that are specific and measurable. So I'll give a few examples. So if you have a building, if you have some kind of physical footprint, the first thing is electrify everything that you can. So if you have any kind of fleet trying to replace and take advantage of some of the tax incentives for electric vehicles, electric manufacturing equipment, high efficiency appliances. And if you are, again, if you have a building, you lease, just trying to reduce wasted energy. So when you think about the winter, really trying to winterize whatever your building is, focus on that energy efficiency. There are a lot of really specific examples we can get into here. The other is getting your building LEED certified. That's kind of a bigger project, but we talked a little bit about on-site renewable energy and the tax incentives for that. The next is waste initiatives. So we hear a lot again and again about recycling. Recycling is important, but it's really only a piece of this pyramid, this upside down pyramid here of how to reduce waste. So the 5 R's are refuse, reduce, reuse, repurpose, and recycle. So you'll notice that recycle is at the bottom of that and it's the smallest. However, it's usually the first thing that businesses think of. Really, the first thing to think of is how much stuff, whatever it is, maybe it's office supplies, maybe it's packaging, how much stuff does your business really need? And how much are you just throwing away at the end of the year, at the end of its life cycle? The first step that you can take is really addressing it upstream by not taking as much in so that you don't have enough waste to deal with. The second is looking at that and reducing it over time. And then if you have materials that you can reuse, so one example was a textile manufacturer that I worked with that was trying to see if they could reuse the scraps that they were making into dog beds, into the filling for dog beds. That's a really specific example, but maybe there is kind of a unique opportunity to reuse that or repurpose that material. And then the last thing is recycling. So if you haven't found any other way to get rid of that excess material, you can look into the most efficient way to recycle it. Sometimes in Montana that can be a little difficult, especially with glass, but it's still worth recycling materials, especially cardboard. Water initiatives, if you have an actual manufacturing process using recycled water for cleaning or for cooling, but really just evaluating what are the appliances that you're using, how much water are you using. Again, this is why measurement is really important. Water efficient landscaping, if you have a property. The next is engaging your suppliers. So if you are a restaurant, if you are a manufacturer, any business, you have some form of supply chain. Even if it's really minimal, you have suppliers. So trying to localize that supply as much as possible, buy local, engage your community, but also who do you buy from and what do those companies do? So are you asking your suppliers questions about what they're doing to evaluate their footprint? Are you choosing to buy from suppliers that you know are taking these kinds of initiatives? Another is employee initiatives, which is can be a little easier of a place to start. One is if you have a number of employees, creating some kind of green team, giving them something to work on that's sustainability aligned. So you don't have to necessarily hire somebody for sustainability. You can try to engage your current employees on a sustainability project. So maybe it's evaluating commuting, maybe it's evaluating waste, and just engaging them in a project. Also, another opportunity, one that I've seen some companies implement, is volunteering paid time off. So giving your employees maybe it's 1 day a month that's paid time off for them to volunteer, and then picking a group locally that you want to volunteer with. This is a way of, we looked at those 3, the planet, profit, and people. This is a way of really emphasizing and using your people maybe to have an impact on the planet, but also giving them a sense of purpose. You can also provide workshops, trainings, sustainability education, or certifications. And the last is really engaging with your community. So when we think about this planet aspect, yes, some of it can be evaluating your business footprint, your building footprint, your manufacturing footprint, your supply chain, but you can also use your purchasing power from your business to have a local impact. So maybe it's donating to local nonprofits that you believe are having a good impact on the climate. Maybe it is, again, volunteering and using your time to support those nonprofits, but really thinking about where your dollars are going as a business and what kind of things you're supporting in the community. So this is probably not everybody loves decision-making matrices, but this is just an example of, if you're looking at what kind of investments are you going to make as a business, ideally you're looking at something that's low cost and high impact, but we know that that's not always going to be the case. We want to try to evaluate everything that we're going to do as a business on what is my cost going to be for implementing this. Maybe it's solar, maybe it's a zero waste initiative. Is this actually going to have the impact that I want it to have? Which is, again, why measurement can be so important. But really trying to maybe attack some of those low-hanging fruit items first. So maybe it's employee initiatives that don't really cost you much, like evaluating how often people are biking to work versus driving to work, but they're still going to have an impact on your business because it's engaging the employees. So this is just a framework to think about what kind of investments or actions are worth taking first. Okay, I know we're kind of I want to save time for questions, so this is kind of the last thing here. So where do I go from here? My first step I usually recommend is conducting some kind of inventory, assessing your waste energy expenditures, and then setting goals. And once you do that kind of evaluation, you can choose your level of transparency with that. You can just use it internally to set goals, move toward those goals, or you can decide that you want to report that out to maybe you're a member organization, maybe you're a business with a lot of, with a mailing list, customers. You can decide to report that out, and just taking action is showing your members, your customers, that you care about this topic. So that's kind of the last thing I want to leave you with is, I've talked to a lot of businesses that feel like they're not experts in this area, so they can't even start. And just by asking the question, are we doing everything as efficiently as possible? Are we doing everything with the environment in mind? Just by asking that question and seeing where that leads, you're already a leader in this area. So I just encourage you to get started. And if I can help, I'm happy to do that. I'd love to talk to people offline afterwards and just chat a little bit about your business and where you can get started. But there are a lot of resources, a lot of nonprofits locally too. So just ask the question and get started. And yeah, thank you. I'd love to open it up to questions.
All right. Well, thanks, Sam. We got a couple of questions that have come in. The first one is, what advice do you give to businesses that are weighing a project that might have an economic benefit, and like a furnace upgrade that might have a cost now and a savings every month, versus something that has more of a marketing component to it and less of a dollars and cents kind of project?
So a marketing component, but not a...
Maybe not a financial component that the business is going to see a return to, more of a, something they can tell their customers and it's an attribute of the business, but it may not have a, specific dollar savings per month to a business.
Sure. I think you can still think of those things as definitely financially beneficial to your business. You're potentially accessing new customers, accessing new talent. All of that is going to have an impact on your bottom line. I hear you that it's a little harder to measure the exact savings, but it's still, you can see what kind of traffic you're getting. If it's through SEO, you can see what kind of increased sales you're getting after you undertake those initiatives. I'm really a big fan of data. So as much data as you can gather on what is the impact for our business after we took that initiative. The other thing I'll say is green marketing is good. The difference between marketing a green initiative and sort of greenwashing, which is just talking about something but not doing it, a lot of times the difference for those two is data. So showing that we reduced our waste by 10% or we reduced waste from packaging, and showing and actually taking an action as opposed to just marketing something. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, and if whoever that wants to chime in, they certainly can. One other question came in before I turn it over to participants here for questions, and that was, what are the most common types of changes that businesses have implemented in this area?
It's a great question. Depends a lot on the size of the business and what their. So basically, any business, when you start with an inventory, you also start with what's called a materiality assessment. So you start with, for your specific business, what are the biggest emissions impacts? So we worked with the University of Montana recently to do an evaluation of their footprint. And what we discovered there is probably the biggest opportunity for them is to cut down on expenditure on flights. So they're sending a lot of folks all over the country to conferences, and we determined that that was the biggest impact on their emissions. So for a business that is sending a lot of materials out, it might be packaging. So it's just so different dependent on the size of your organization. I would say that most people, it seems like they start with waste because it's something that a lot of consumers are really focused on right now, especially in Missoula, but in other parts of Montana, they're really focused on this zero waste initiative. So I'd say that's where a lot of folks start. But the reason that evaluating your footprint is so important is that may not actually be the biggest impact that your business has. It might just be the thing that you're hearing about. And so that's the action that you take.
All right, well, thanks, Sam. Let me now open it up. Would any of the attendees like to ask any questions other than what they sent in through the chat already?
This is Tracy. And
Hey, Tracy.
I probably have two questions and maybe a spark of a conversation. So, in my day job, I work for a very large corporation that's very focused on sustainability, but we're also bringing a project to this region that will be looking at small businesses to help us be able to accomplish that. So, at the end of the day, I don't often look deeper, right? We are focused on socioeconomic categories and the ability to do the work. But I definitely am a firm believer that with this in my after hours job and personal life. And so one of the things I'm looking at is not so much, I don't want to say it this way, but not so much looking to build a sustainable small business. My small business is looking to build sustainable buildings and projects. And to me, it seems like it's always easier for a small business to start up and do sustainable activities than for a business to go back and try to invest in doing sustainable activities. I just think sometimes it's kind of hard to unravel that piece of it. But when you were talking about the LEED buildings and functionality, I've seen LEED buildings. I was part of the credit union movement, so I saw when the first credit union was LEED certified over in the Missoula area. I know that more and more buildings are coming online to be LEED, but have we seen a lot of that over the state? And I say that I'm looking at residential homes, but I'm just curious if there are businesses who are actually investing in building LEED for themselves or not. Are we seeing that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Okay.
Yeah, I am seeing that with a lot of new buildings that are coming online. It just still seems to be the industry standard. I know I've talked to a couple of folks who found that it was a little too burdensome, the LEED certification process. But I've seen others are still going through with it, and it is still the industry standard. But I'd, be happy to look into that a little bit more and talk to real estate folks and get back to you.
Thanks. I see that it would be great for a small business to be able to move into an already designated sustainable, even if it's not LEED certified, but a sustainable facility versus having to go out there and invest in that infrastructure itself. I've
Yeah.
seen them all across the US. In Great Falls, I am fairly active in the community, and I don't know if we have one that the building owner or the overall company has promoted the fact that they are sustainable.
Sure. I mean, for some small businesses, it might be more applicable to look into green leases and green leasing provisions. So if you're not actually the owner of the building, you can ask to have certain provisions written into your lease when you move into a building about energy efficiency. So that's another avenue to go down. And it's worth just kind of looking up green leasing provisions. If anybody's interested in that, I can definitely send more information. But yeah, that I still am seeing that in certain places, but I hear you that maybe it isn't being advertised as much locally.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Lexi DiPentino, and I have a store in Livingston. I partner with over 100 Montana artists and businesses, so I get a lot of product in from suppliers, but then like a third of my people I order and they ship to me. So I'm getting a lot of boxes in. And I do see that my people, some of them reuse them. But I'm just wondering if you have an idea of something that I can do, because I'm constantly going to the recycling bin, which is fine, but the back of my car is always full. And I don't know if there's other ways to reuse the cardboard or anything like that.
So are most of them within a distance that it would be difficult to set up some kind of like centralized drop off? Are they coming from pretty far
Yeah.
away?
Yeah, they're hours away, so all across
Okay.
the state.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, one option would be to provide compostable packaging ahead of time, but or to encourage folks to use compostable packaging. That way you can, instead of taking it to be recycled, you can actually take it to be composted. I know in Missoula there's a big compost. I'm not sure exactly what that opportunity looks like in Livingston, but you can even set up your own compost. That's one option. Another option would be to ask the folks who are sending them to try to reuse their boxes. So instead of them buying, a box at FedEx or something, just send out kind of a newsletter blast, say, hey, I'm trying to cut down on the amount that I'm recycling. If you can use Amazon boxes or anything else that you have that you might already have, then we're already making an impact upstream because those boxes are being reused. And then, it'd be great if there's an opportunity for you to maybe set up in some kind of central location and give a lot of those back, or maybe ask local businesses if they have any need for them.
That's a great
Unfortunately,
idea. Yeah.
yeah, I think, it just depends on what type of businesses are around you, but there may be some businesses that instead of buying a bunch of packaging, you can kind of post on a local forum or talk to local
Yeah.
businesses and say, hey, I have a bunch of cardboard. I don't necessarily have a need for it. Is this something that could help you out? So really just trying to engage the community.
And maybe even because a lot of people move all the time, just offering, hey, if you guys are moving, we always
Yeah.
have boxes at Lulu's. So
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. I will say, as far as things you're recycling, there still is a market for cardboard, so it's a lot
Good.
more likely that it's actually effective recycling, because there's,
That's what
you know, a
yeah,
difference. Yeah, yeah.
I always
If you're
worry with that.
recycling plastic, there's a really good chance that it's just going to be thrown away, or it's not going to be used in an efficient manner, but there still is a market for cardboard. So at least, you know, hopefully that makes you feel a little bit better about
Yeah,
the recycling you're doing, but
yeah.
yeah.
I did wonder about that. And then another item I have, and this kind of maybe goes with the green leasing, I don't know. I have, and I'm already in my lease. I'm 3 years into my store, but I have 4 coolers here, so I'm generating a lot of heat inside my store. I don't really have to, I just need an air conditioner. Like this winter, I won't run my heat that much, but my electric bill is still $600 a month. And so it would be nice to have solar panels from my landlord, but is there a program that I can share with him that would help encourage him? Because he's gonna have to put money into it, right? I'm not like I mean, I guess I could offset it from my electric bill or something, but do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm looking up what it's so there's the investment tax credit is a tax credit that reduces the tax liability for the cost of solar. I can send you, you know, if you provided your email to the webinar, I can definitely send you some more materials afterwards. But there are specific tax credits and rebates right now for the investment in solar. You
Okay.
could maybe offer to help with some of the upfront costs, but you know, if you're not going to have ownership in the solar, then I don't know that you would want to do that. But it is a great thing to think about, and maybe just start a discussion and see if they've thought about it, because ultimately it's going to save them money.
Right.
So, you know, even just bringing that up. It looks like Rich just put it in the chat. Take a look at the USDA REAP program.
Yeah, the
Thank you.
USDA has a program out there called REAP. I think it's Rural Energy Assistance Partnership or something, and they'll pay for, I think they'll grant up to 50% on a renewable project.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
And Sam, you're kind of on the topic already, but we did have a question come in that somebody would be interested in hearing more about green leasing. Maybe you could expand a little bit on your earlier comments.
Sure. Yeah, so it's writing specific provisions into your lease, like, for example, requiring the landlord to make energy efficient upgrades to the building, like energy efficient lighting or HVAC systems, or requiring that the tenant install, or not the tenant, requiring that the landlord install more energy efficient smart metering, smart lighting. So basically asking them, requiring them to make certain investments in the infrastructure that will reduce the energy use, which which will benefit them. But it's a negotiation process in the leasing.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm assuming it makes
Definitely
it challenging when you're not, if the electric bill is being paid by the tenant and you own the building, it's a little different discussion than if you are paying the bill and making an investment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, let's ask one more time. Are there any additional questions for Sam? All right, I think that's our awkward pause. So, Sam, I want to thank you again for taking the time to present. Did you have any final comments you wanted to share with the group?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for being here and encourage you that, any small steps you take are going to just roll up and get us closer to this goal. So my company is called Renewably. It's renewably.us or sam@renewably.us. And I'd be happy to chat with you further about your business and see if we can move you a little closer on those goals. Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you. And Also for everyone, please mark your calendars for December 7th at 11 o'clock, and we will have our next small business webinar series, and that's going to focus on Chat GPT, and we'll have Rich Gannon as our presenter. So thanks everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for a great webinar.